Welcome to my talk, which is going to be about the effect, the attitudes, the perceptions of cookie notices. So the title slide gives you an example of what cookie notices are. I assume at least to those of you in Europe, I don't have to explain what cookie notices are. In the US, I don't know what the status is. Maybe you guys don't see them as much, also with the rest of the world. But basically, these are these pop-ups that appear on websites and that you have to. Sometimes you can just ignore them and browse the website. Sometimes you have to make some sort of decision whether you want to allow data collection where cookies are not on your website. And now, so this is how the disclaimers again can look like. And the expectations were that the disclaimer should provide a possibility for the users to be informed about data collection. So ideally, the user would read this notice, they would make an informed decision. Do they want to agree to share their data or not? With the websites, and then either accept or not accept if there is such a possibility. So this was the idea behind it, all noble goals. However, what appeared in the reality, what we can witness now, is that these cookie notices, these disclaimers have a lot of so-called dark patterns on them. And by dark patterns, I mean some kind of deceiving visual design elements that nudge users into accepting data sharing via cookies that they would otherwise perhaps not accept. And so there is a variety of such dark patterns that one can see. Again, many of you have probably seen a lot of such dark patterns yourselves, and I will provide some examples further in the talk. And the research questions we had in this study, in this work, is first of all, do they work? Are people actually affected by these dark patterns? Do they make decisions they would otherwise not make, and so on? But also wanted to find out more about it. So how do these dark patterns, these design elements actually perceived by the users? How do people react when they see these dark patterns? How do they feel? How do they think about these dark patterns, and so on? And in order to answer these questions, we have conducted 2 studies using sort of mixed method design. So we had a quantitative and qualitative mixture of methods. And the first study was a quantitative one. For the most part, it was implemented as a lab study. And since it was done right at the beginning of the pandemic, it was done with Teams and screen sharing and screen recording. So this was also a challenge for us and for the students who conducted this study, basically to figure out how do you conduct lab studies during the pandemic, since it was really during the very first weeks of it. We had 40 participants, all relatively young, so ages 25 to 31. We had 2 groups of participants, and the participants were randomly distributed into these 2 groups. And the difference between these groups is that difference of the cookie disclaimers, the so-called banner disclaimer and the so-called barrier disclaimer. Again, I'll talk in a minute about what these are. And so we had 2 groups, and in which group we showed the users a website, 3 websites that contain disclaimers from either banner or barrier type. So the websites we chose, we wanted to see how people react on some real websites in some relatively real settings. So we instructed them to open some chosen websites during the lab and then see how they react. So the study was conducted as follows. First, we welcomed the participants. We told them to interact with the websites. So at this point, we did not tell them that the study is about cookies or about privacy or anything of this sort. Instead, the participants were told that we want to investigate the usability of these selected websites. So we were given them some particular tasks, and they were told to interact with the websites. And if they saw a cookie disclaimer, which they should have seen, we noted how they reacted to disclaimer. And then the participants were debriefed. So they were told that actually the real purpose of the study was not to study usability of the websites, but to understand how they interact with the cookie disclaimer. And then they were told to fill out the questionnaire about the choices they made and what they felt, basically the impressions of the disclaimer. So the disclaimers in this part of the study were, as I told, 2 sets of disclaimers, banner and barrier. So the first one you can see here, the top Denmark one, is the example of a barrier disclaimer. And the purpose here is that the idea behind this type of disclaimers is that it is shown on the website and it blocks the content of the website. So in order to access the contents of the website, you have to make some decision. So in this example, you have 2 choices. You can click on OK, which means accepting data sharing, or you can click on show details, and then you have the options to reject the cookies. So already you see the example of a dark pattern where the option to accept is much more visible, it's much more easy to access than the option to reject data sharing via cookies. And the second type of disclaimer, the so-called banner disclaimer, this is the pop-up that is shown on the bottom of the screen or on the top of the screen, but the purpose behind it is that it doesn't obscure the contents of the website, so you can actually ignore the disclaimer and just browse the website as it is. However, if you're careful and if you read what the disclaimer actually says, it tells that by continuing to browse the website, you agree to collection of cookies. So if you just ignore the website, the disclaimer, and if you don't do anything, the intention is it is interpreted as your intention to accept the cookies. And also you can see the dark patterns is once again the accept button is much more highlighted. And also if the background color of the website is also like white or light gray, it is possible that disclaimer is not quite noticed. So the research questions with this part of the study was, does disclaimer design affect whether participants allow cookies? So we told them to browse the website without telling them it was about cookies. We noted what option they chose, and then we wanted to compare, is there any difference between these types of disclaimers? And as we also asked participants questions afterwards, we asked them, did they even notice a disclaimer, or did they remember the decision they make? We also wanted to compare whether it plays a role with the participants even registered that there was a disclaimer on the website. So we had following websites for the study. We had 3 types of websites. First, we chose a website of the airport. So because we wanted to see how participants or how users react on government websites, do they either more careful about their privacy or less careful about their privacy. So we chose 2 websites of airports. Each website has having a different kind of disclaimer. We chose a website for health insurance. Again, 2 websites with 1 type of disclaimer each. The purpose here was to choose a private company that might have access to some potential sensitive data. For example, if the users browse insurance plans that include particular treatment. And we chose a website, again, 2 websites of sports union. So as an example, a website that doesn't contain any sensitive information or should not collect any sensitive information from users. And we were given cover stories. So we told basically the participants, please do this task so that we can check the usability of the websites. And the task that were given was check for the airport website to check what one can buy duty-free shops, to study different kinds of insurance, to find information about sport trackers. So again, the purpose here was to really try not to plan the participants thinking about cookies, but instead just observe how they interact with websites on a regular basis, just solving the tasks that our users on these websites do. So the results were as follows. We did notice there was a significant difference in consent to disclaimers, with much more participants accepting the disclaimer on the banner website, as you can see here. And there was also significant difference between participants noticing the disclaimer. So one interesting finding for us was that afterwards we asked participants, do they remember seeing the disclaimer? The participants that were subjected to the banner disclaimer, a lot of them said that and they haven't even noticed it. So again, this points to the question, can you really assume informed consent of the users if they don't even remember seeing the disclaimer, if they don't even notice the disclaimer? And we didn't see any significant difference between the websites, so this might be subject for future investigation, because our sample size in this example was quite limited, but at least in this study, we did not observe a difference between, say, governmental websites and websites from private companies. So what we can conclude from this stage is that dark patterns are effective, meaning that the design of the disclaimer actually influences whether people consent to data collection or not. Again, this comes to the question, can we really assume informed consent? Can we really assume that people make decisions based on whether they're concerned or not about their privacy? And so my opinion would be informed consent is questionable in this regard. So this was the first study we did in order to understand better our results, in order to understand not just how people react, but also why are they reacting this or that or other way. We did follow-up interviews. So we interviewed 10 participants, again, quite young, ages 22 to 28. And the goal was to conduct a more in-depth study of their attitudes. And this qualitative interview is conducted of 2 parts. In the first part, we asked them some general questions about their attitudes towards cookies, data collection, privacy concerns, and so on. And we also showed them several examples of cookie disclaimer designs. Again, I'm going to talk more about them in a minute. And here, this interaction was divided into 2 parts. The initial interaction took place during the first part, and then 2 weeks later, there was some follow-up interaction because, again, we wanted to get some opinions from people on these websites, but hopefully so that they're not influenced by their own answers they gave before. So this disclaimers design was shown to them. They were inspired by designs commonly seen on websites. And they exhibit a variety of dark patterns. So again, you can see a highlighted OK button. You can see the disclaimer that is very hard to, very easy to miss on a gray background, where the website background is light gray. You can see different kinds of information provided on the disclaimers, different kinds of settings the users can choose, and so on. So basically, for these disclaimers, we looked at existing websites and tried to synthesize the ones which we felt were most common. And the question that we asked the participants in this stage was to rank designs in terms of most freedom of choice, to get some qualitative feedback about them, and then 2 weeks later to rank the designs from best to worst. So what kind of disclaimer would they prefer to see on websites? The results were as follows. Regarding the general attitudes towards tracking, we found that our participants were aware of data collection, so they spoke in quite details about how they felt data is collected from them. They were not comfortable with common data use. As such, when they talked about personal ads, they used some really strong words such as manipulative, disgusting, wrong, creepy. So really, you could see not just that participants have negative opinion, but that this opinion is also quite emotionally charged with them. And they also expressed not being comfortable with transferring data outside of Denmark or European Union. So a lot of them expressed, or some of them expressed this sentiment that Denmark has regulations, European Union has some regulations, but if you transfer data to other countries, China, Russia, US was commonly named, then they felt like maybe this data will not be sufficiently protected, or there will not be sufficient legal mechanisms to enforce the proper data protection measures. And these are some examples of the quotes. So this one says, if I speak something about with my friends, it can pop up on Facebook 10 minutes later. It is spooky. So again, this participant had quite strong feelings about this. And this participant mentioned this is more when it's outside of EU, where our rules of personal data don't apply. I don't know. So again, participants were concerned about sharing their data on non-EU websites. When asked about attitudes towards cookie disclaimers, again, our participants had quite good levels of awareness, and they were aware about the use of dark patterns, and yet they said that they were consenting anyway. They were just clicking on whatever button they saw, because otherwise it would be too much effort on their behalf. When it came to specific disclaimers, they prefer disclaimers with more freedom of choice. So the disclaimer you see here was most preferred also in terms of what disclaimer they would like to see on websites, and this is also a disclaimer that was rated as having the most freedom of choice. As you can see, there are 2 options there: accept selected, reject all, and there is some settings that people can choose. And participants also pointed at certain design elements as being deceitful as suggested. So again, some quotes to illustrate. This one said that I would press cookie settings when shown a particular example or disclaimer, but OK is highlighted, so that one's suggestive. So the participant recognized that it is a bit manipulative and suggestive, and it should be just as easy to say no as it is to say yes. And this quote is the one that gave the name to our paper. Basically, it is too difficult to hit no, and so the participants spoke about how they felt like it was just too difficult to really make the choices they want to make. And at the end, they say they felt overwhelmed with this, and I can deal with it, so I sold my soul. So again, quite a strong sentiment here. So to summarize, we can conclude that dark patterns are indeed effective, so they lead users to make choices that lead to sharing more data. Still, they are demoralizing in a sense that participants recognize they are being manipulated. They are concerned about their data, but they feel they make the choices they make because otherwise it's too overwhelming. So there is this sense of resignation. So this is not a good thing. And what it means for future research or maybe for future policies is that holistic approaches are needed. It is not enough to rely on consent mechanisms, which was also not for previous research. So it's once again shown here. But more structural measures should be implemented to address users, but also developers of these website service providers, of these disclaimers, and also legislators that might have the need to provide or enforce better solutions that actually are helpful towards privacy. All right, so I think I'm done with this one. Thank you, and I'm happy to hear questions in the panel.